From cult hits that skip over and ignore a rather notable absence from the get-go, to opening crawls that left eyes a-rolling within seconds. These are those movies that ticked off a lot of fine folks in around a minute flat. Gareth here from WhatCulture.com, and here are 9 movies so annoying they lose you in the first 60 seconds.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and it's all yours.
Number 9, John Connor is terminated. Terminator Dark Fate. By the time the most recent attempt to steer the Terminator franchise in a new direction properly got underway, after Sarah Connor's intense Judgment Day warning to humanity, and the sight of machines storming a beach of course, fans found themselves being treated to a 1998 flashback involving Linda Hamilton's leading lady and her son John, brought to life by combining Edward Furlong's facial likeness with Jude Colley's body. Only, far from this being a pleasant trip down memory lane with 2 digitally altered Terminator icons at a beach bar, it took less than a minute for Sarah's peaceful reality to be completely massacred by a T-800. Naturally, leaving Jaws dangling the world over, and many fans, Furlong included, somewhat annoyed at the speed of his demise, the apparent saviour of the human race was quickly dispatched by another version of Arnie's unstoppable machine. Sure, this definitely gripped fans before they'd even had a chance to properly get comfortable in their seats, but cutting down such a pivotal figure from the franchise so soon into the flick that promised to be a continuation of those first 2 beloved Terminator tales was always destined to brass off many, as Hamilton herself noted early on. She's a wise lady. Number 8, Vanessa was actually a robot all along, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Sticking with those movies that only decide to frustrate their audience in the wake of a seemingly innocent enough prologue, the follow-up to the first outing for Mike Myers' Austin Powers opted to render the prior comedy flick's romantic core completely useless in record time. Hot on the heels of spoofing Star Wars with an opening crawl that already teased the incoming piss take of a swerve, and Dr. Evil re-entering Earth's atmosphere, the recently married secret agent can be found enjoying his honeymoon with wife Vanessa Kensington. Yet this happily ever after is also very quickly terminated, as within about a minute it soon becomes apparent that Elizabeth Hurley's character was actually a fembot last seen in the prior entry all along. Within 60 seconds of picking back up where fans last left Austin, Vanessa has already glitched and squeezed a bottle of champagne into oblivion with her bare hands. And these first flickers of robo-chaos are soon followed up by the new Mrs. Powers quickly being revealed to have been controlled by Dr. Evil this whole time, before her head explodes in a bid to kill Austin, you know, as you do. Once the wave of shocked chuckles subside, however, the fact the entire previous film's development of Powers as a character is quickly undone in order to unleash him as a single James Bond-esque bachelor again, while appropriate for a 007 spoof, did leave many feeling a little cheated early on into The Spy Who Shagged Me. Number 7, what happened to the prologue? Jurassic World Dominion. And after jumping to the action that precedes those movie-setting sequences for the prior 2 entries, it's time to take a closer look at a prologue, or lack of, that immediately angered folks who had been expecting a certain development for an age. I'm talking about those many prehistoric film fans who settled down to take in the prologue sequence they'd been analysing and unpacking online for months, only to discover that Colin Trevorrow and Universal had actually chosen to leave out this exciting 5-minute prologue, in place of the sequence that involved dinosaurs roaming the planet back in the day, and a colossal carnivore showdown before segging to said dinos invading a drive-in movie theater in modern times. The third Jurassic World entry gets underway with yet another Mosasaurus attack opening, before that awesome creature goes missing for the rest of the runtime. Oh, except for having a quick paddle with some whales late on, how sweet. Trevorrow himself has noted how he feels the OG prologue is still the true opening for his Dominion outing, but that still doesn't change the fact that some Jurassic diehards no doubt felt that Universal really dropped the ball in not shaving off 5 minutes elsewhere in the staggering 146-minute theatrical length to let loose this well-received original opening instead. Number 6, Woody and Naomi voiced their younger selves. Venom, Let There Be Carnage. While likely living long in the memory for most due to the multiversal events that transpire after the actual flick itself has wrapped up, Sony very nearly didn't have an audience to play out those final MCU Spider-Man teasing moments too, thanks to the frankly absurd dubbing decision made by the studio and Andy Serkis early in the Let There Be Carnage day. In a bid to hammer home the fact that the symbiote Venom-loving crowd were witnessing the younger versions of Cletus Cassidy and Francis Barrison, the director of this second Venom showing chose to have the adult versions of the eventual Carnage and Shriek actors, Woody Harrelson and Naomi Harris respectively, voice their younger counterparts in a prologue of sorts. What follows is the sort of surreal opening 60 seconds that pretty much sets the tone for the often cringy and jarring turd in the wind that follows, with Harrison and Harris very much mature vocal quality, robbing the sequence involving the young lovers being tragically separated of any real emotional weight or impact due to the all-round silliness of the effect. That being said, if you were expecting any genuine emotional weight and impact heading into the follow-up to 2018's Venom, well then more fool you, I suppose. Number 5, fans go deaf in an instant. Tenet. Heading out of Christopher Nolan's bombastic slice of big screen storytelling, the most common criticism of the director's attempt to delve into the world of espionage was the fact that he seemed more focused on deafening his audience than actually giving them a fulfilling cinematic experience. Look no further than the film's opera house opening. Right from the off, Nolan pierces through those in attendance's eardrums with a thudding score and muffled dialogue from John David Washington's protagonist as the leading CIA operative attempts a secret extraction in the midst of a terrorist attack. And while the thundering opening minute of the flick doesn't possess quite as many verbal exchanges getting lost in the ear-splitting music and background sound effects as at other points in the divisive film, there's still enough blaring surges of musical noise and excruciating sounds of sleeping gas being pumped into air vents to leave folks wincing in their seats early on. Number 4, Superman CGI upper lip pisses off the masses. Justice League. In the years before being welcomed back to the DCEU with open arms, Henry Cavill found himself at the center of one of the most unlikely controversies in superhero movie history, that being the CGI erasing of some facial fuzz upon the Man of Steel himself returning to reshoot parts of Justice League. With Joss Whedon being brought aboard the then incoming DC ensemble epic in the wake of Zack Snyder dropping out of forging the flick due to a family tragedy, Paramount weren't keen on Cavill shaving the mustache he'd grown for Mission Impossible Fallout partway through filming on that feature, and soon denied Warner Brothers a clean-shaven Supes when the time came to shoot additional material for Whedon's vision of the flick. This soon led to the folks behind the ill-fated initial Justice League outing having to resort to digitally erasing Cavill's tash for moments such as the opening Kal-El phone-recorded conversation with some excitable children, and the end results were about as painful as the sound of those whippersnappers asking Supes to talk to them on their podcast. But at least the rest of the DC team-up deliver the goods, right? Number 3, Io dies in between films. Wrath of the Titans. Joining the unfortunate John Connor as a character frustratingly cut down before the first real minute of cinematic action had even come to an end, Gemma Arterton's Io saw herself also getting unceremoniously dispatched within 60 seconds of Clash of the Titans sequel. After being dramatically brought back to life by Perseus's father Zeus in the closing stages of that 2010 fantasy blockbuster, Io and Sam Worthington's leading light appear to be destined for a loving future among mortals. Oh, you love to see it. Completely pulverizing those hopes and dreams in rapid fashion though, Wrath of the Titans soon throws an opening sequence at fans, which explains how Io actually died in between the two flicks, with Perseus being spotted laying down a stony grave for his seemingly recently deceased wife. And just like that, the prior film's once touching conclusion was wholeheartedly undone in less than a minute flat, with Arterton's commitment to Hansel and Gretel witch hunters leading to the folks behind the Titans series having to swiftly write her out of the follow-up and leave those who invested in Perseus and Io's love story feeling somewhat short-changed from minute 1. Number 2, The Dead Speak, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. While the actual reveal of Emperor Palpatine's ghostly mug comes a couple of minutes into J.J. Abrams' often blasted final entry in the Skywalker saga, Rise of Skywalker's opening crawl let fans know pretty early on that they were in for a pretty chaotic ride about 40 seconds into Episode 9. That's because in what must surely rank as the most adventurous opening line to grace the franchise's iconic opening fourth wall breaker since Revenge of the Sith to the point, war! Rise of Skywalker gets this divisive ball rolling with the groan-inducing statement of The Dead Speak. If it hadn't already been made clear in the film's promotional material, and the announcement of Ian McDiarmid very much being back for the final chapter of this long-running epic, the subsequent opening statement of the late voice of Emperor Palpatine supposedly threatening revenge against the galaxy from beyond the grave pretty much confirmed early on that far more than a brief evil spirit cameo showing was on the horizon, whether you wanted it or not. Sure enough, a clone zombie palps terrorized a great deal of the subsequent 140-minute misstep, and those unfortunate fans looking for something more than a hollow nostalgia fest for that matter.